Right, just give us a brief born and raised and sort of what you was up into as a kid and all that sort of stuff.
Born and raised in sunny Wigan. My parents were from Liverpool, and we moved to a place called Skelmersdale. That was kind of one of those 60s, late 60s, early 70s overflow places like Milton Keynes, for a big city, for people to, young couples to have the opportunity to move. So we moved to Skelmersdale from there when I think it was like 3 or 4, something like that. And then spent a couple of years there. Then we moved across to Wigan, which is where I was kind of brought up and pretty much lived all my life there. Weirdly, I'm now living back in Skelmersdale, where I currently live. So yeah, back to where I was born in Ormskirk, which is the next town from Skelmersdale. So yeah, weirdly back the conversation we were just having, back to where I was born. So lived in Wigan until probably late 30s. Then married and moved kind of here to Skelmersdale. Okay. Married with three kids. Cool, Louis, who is 20. Louis broke the mold as a Clayton, as in the academic. Went to college, and he's now at John Moores University studying. Studying, he wants to become an architect. Definitely didn't get that from me.
Professional.
Lilia is 13, and Abe is 10. So 3 kids.
Cool, nice. How's that? Any of them into bikes?
So Louis was kind of got into BMX when he was probably 7, 8, 9.
Oh, right.
And it was when my coaching stuff first started. So it was a bit weird. It was like him coming to work with his dad. You know what I mean? And he kind of we always encouraged him to because obviously firstborn, encouraged him to do loads of stuff. Football, basketball, kind of really took to football and kind of eased off BMX a little bit to play football. He got a little bit better, and then weirdly in lockdown we started riding again, and he kind of mentioned all right, I think I want to race again, and race for a little bit, and then unfortunately had a pretty big crash, broke his tib fib, pretty gnarly one. For me that was the first experience of it being one. Obviously as a coach I deal with kids crashing all the time, and you just go into that kind of mode. But that was my first one of it, having the experience of what
on the outside
experience looking at their child doing that. And it's a completely different, it's so I was a couple of days. It was a serious injury, a couple of days kind of going, wow, I never thought it would feel like that to see your, and obviously it was a BMX race and stuff like that. So and then from that point, mum was like, no, you're not doing it anymore. And again, this is probably why he's at John Moores University studying to be an architect, because he did actually come back and crashed again. And had a pretty bad wrist break, which needed some stuff in there. So that was his BMX journey done. But he's back. He plays football now, and he's back playing football, enjoying it. So, like I said, he's studying at uni. But my 2 younger ones, not really not really interested in bikes. It's a bit of a weird one now, isn't it? With like, as much as you try, the world of computer games and all that kind of stuff. Well, you don't get me wrong; they're active, but it just doesn't involve bikes. Which, again, and I'm not sure I'd be able to do the job that I do if it was a full kind of family thing, I guess. But we ride bikes, but there's no kind of BMX competition as like or going to skate parks with them, which is a shame.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of BMX crashes, like, you think that the crashes are worse now than when you was racing in the 80s and 90s?
I don't know, like when I think about, like, I was really lucky through my BMX riding. I just had the classic, you're falling, you put your hands down. So like broken wrists, like good ones, like probably three, 4 each wrist, collarbones. But luckily enough, no major breaks. Let's touch some wood there because I still ride my bike. And it's definitely,
because I'm guessing people are going faster.
Yeah,
and ultimately and the tracks look like harder as well. Like, you're not slipping on them tracks as much. But
I guess there's, but I don't think, like, if you think back to like some of the crashes you've seen, again, you know what I mean. I'm going back to, like, you think of, I don't know, we used to build like plywood ramps on the building site, you know what I mean? That were just breeze blocks stacked high, two big pieces of ply, and you just keep pushing it wider and wider until somebody takes the hell out of it, and no helmet, shorts and t-shirts, whatever, So there was bad crashing then. I just think it's looked at a little bit differently now when people crash, and again, it's weird. I think there's more, like, especially race crashes. I'm not sure about like the freestyle world or whatever. I'm guessing trails and whatever there is, but like if you're jumping off, at a race bike doing 40 miles an hour, and it depends on the crash as well, right? So like if you clip somebody and it fires you out and you're completely out of control, if it's a crash that you're jumping off. But I think there's definitely, in BMX racing, there's definitely more skin lost than ever before, like you're saying, because of the speed, because of the track surface, like people sliding, like some of the skin stuff that you see is pretty gruesome, you know what I mean? Like when they're sliding, like shoulders, hips, stuff like that. So it's definitely.
I just see some horrendous like crashes in racing sometimes when I watch it. And I just wonder if it's because people are clicked in and they know that something's going wrong, but they've lost that split second to like react to it. So then then suddenly you're in a place that you've never been before. I just wondered if it was worse, but
that's kind of the other thing with racing as well. Obviously, with the clip pedals, if you kind of take your hands off first, and sometimes there's no choice to do that, and you can't get your feet out because your hands are off, then it's going to be a wreck, right? Whereas
it's a bad one,
sometimes you can crash because you've bumped into somebody and your foot's come off, like going up the lip or whatever, and then you're off balance, and you can manage to kind of get off and land a little bit better. But a lot of it is the racing now. Everybody's closer. You know what I mean? Like they're going faster, and their skill level, because they're out and out racers, their skill levels, they can ride at high speed a lot closer. Therefore, slight touches or somebody gets something wrong, sometimes you end up smashing yourself, and it's not even been nothing that you've done; it's something else has happened.
Of course.
Close. But there's definitely, and again, the design of some of the tracks as well. Like a lot of the time, you crash. If you crash, then it's highly likely that you're gonna hit like the face of another jump or the back or the back landing of another jump as well. So that's always a pretty heavy one, to see. Definitely now, like a couple of weeks ago in a race, like there was a crash there, and you see someone hit and they hit hard, and you just think, whoa, that is such a big. And then you find out like later on, like it wasn't one of the guys or girls that I work with, but then you kind of find out later on, hey, what happened to that kid or whatever, and like he broke his pelvis, completely smashed himself. So yeah, definitely gnarly. But not to say that we didn't crash hard.
Yeah.
90s and
of course, yeah. It just seems worse now from a spectator's. I don't watch much, but it just looks bad. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, you got a bit sidetracked. So you're in Wigan. When did you see your first BMX?
I remember there was a kid on the estate where I lived, and I remember coming home from school, and it was summer, because I remember it being sunny outside, and I was walking down the drive of where we lived then, and this kid rode past on like a blue burner, like the classic blue burner with like the yellow tufts on it, and I was just like, wow. What it looks so different than anything else. Yeah. And I was like, I couldn't. Obviously, it was a bike then that those bikes would sell out. You know what I mean? Like straight away. And the nearest thing that I could get to that, which I think was a pretty close one, was I can't think what it was called. It's called a Cycle Pro, but it was the same kind of like color blue, but it had yellow OGK mags on it.
Okay.
And I got so I'd seen that late summer, and like kind of not, just BMX became more of a thing. I see more people around the estate on BMX kind of looking bikes. Like I remember seeing I can't remember, it might have been like a Piranha or something like that, which I thought was pretty. I just like the name, you know what I mean? It's like whoa. And then I ended up getting my BMX bike for Christmas, which was that yellow and blue Cycle.
All right.
Yeah.
Amazing. So this is like pure boom time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being the bikes, yeah. Oh, and what can you remember? Sorry.
I did put a picture in that where we were rad. There was on their Instagram page or something like that. There was a kid who posted a picture, and he was on that exact bike, and I was like, seeing that brings back those memories. But yeah, it was pretty boom time then.
Had you not seen another one of them bikes since you had one?
No, that's what I mean. I hadn't not that exact how it must have come out of the shop. You know what I mean? Because that bike soon changed. It was weird, isn't it? How obviously you're skidding, so the next thing you've got it had blue tires on it, and I couldn't get a blue tire, so it had a blue tire on the front and a black one on the back. For some reason, there was a thing then, which unbeknown to me was you took your front brake off and it only had a back brake, so it got and you'd go to and I don't remember where we got parts from at that point. Maybe we just traded with other kids or whatever, but I remember changing the grips on it because the grips were solid plastic, but it might have just been swapping with some other kid who you bumped into oh, you want to swap grips or whatever.
Color,
But yeah, that was my first experience of seeing a BMX bike and then getting my own one for Christmas.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
And have you seen a BMX mag in this period of time? Can you remember seeing it in print?
Well, I think that kind of building up to getting my first BMX bike, I remember where we lived on the estate, there was in the middle of the estate, there was just like 2 shops, and one of them was a newsagent. And I remember going in to that newsagent because someone was saying, "Hey, you can buy BMX magazines and stuff like that."
Way.
So I remember going into the newsagents and looking at that. And I think they didn't. If I remember correctly, the kid who I seen first on the BMX bike, obviously I got to know that kid. His name is Simon, and his parents asked that paper shop to start ordering the magazine. So then I think I'd seen a BMX magazine before I had my first BMX.
Before you had your bike, yeah, same.
Yeah. And I guess that would have been, I don't know, that might have been that would have been like a BMX Weekly maybe, or something like that. I don't know. 84, something like that.
Okay, Action Bike or Weekly, they were kind of big at that point. Yeah.
And it was kind of that even more, like seeing like there was a magazine with pictures of people riding these bikes and kind of doing tricks and stuff like that, and it made it even more exciting on that Christmas morning when that classic, you know what I mean? My mum was like, "Oh, we lived in like a semi-detached house, and it had patio doors at the back, like the dining room, and they'd done that classic thing of hide it behind the curtains and going after open the curtains or whatever." And that this bike was there, and it was. It was
excellent.
That.
Oh, and where was you riding those bikes in the early days? Just around the estate, or did you like find somewhere to ride them?
Yeah, just like I said, on the estate, and then there was, well, I don't know whether it's the same for you, but really quickly owning this bike, your friendship network all of a sudden seemed to grow. It was the bike that connected other young lads and girls from around the estate, and obviously people had these bikes, like the likes of Simon had this bike for a year up until the point of where I got mine, and there was other stuff going on. So initially at that age, I was allowed to play on the estate, you know what I mean? And it was more jumping, like jumping driveway curbs and, like doing wheelies and all of that kind of stuff. And then we heard about like the main road that you used to have to cross to get to another estate where I actually went to school. My primary school and middle school was there. I remember hearing the conversations about, they've made like there's a grass bank, and they've been jumping out of this grass bank, and all of a sudden it's created this jump or whatever, and then begging my mum, like, can I go across the school? These lads are, these lads are older than me, and they'll look after me or whatever. So then that first time of being allowed to cross that main road and venture out, it was actually to my then primary school, and then also the middle school, which was right next to it, kind of where, and weirdly, it's still there. You know what I mean? The
grass bank.
Yeah, it's still the actual primary school is still exactly the same, and the grounds are still the same. And I remember when Louis, my youngest, he used to go to a nursery, and I remember we used to walk down and walk past like the path of the school, and you can see the school grounds. Obviously, it had a big fence around it at that point.
Yeah.
But you can see inside, and just again those memories. Like there was this big grass island in the middle of the playground, and I just remember that it used to just have like 2 lips on this side. And then another lip on another side, and then you go to the other side of the playground and turn around, and then there was this like kind of big, like longer grass bank, and you could jump like across this big piece of flat grass onto like the tarmac thing, and it was all like obviously the grass had grown back, but the memory of going
it's
structurally
first real riding spot. Yeah.
What
How many kids used to session that? Do you remember? Was that the place to go, like in Wigan, or one of them, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, for that, like that estate where I lived was a place called Maris Bridge, and the place across the main road was a place called Winstanley and Goose Green, and then obviously where I lived in Maris Bridge, further down, there was a bigger shopping precinct. And at that point, there was lads from down there riding, and there was a car park outside the precinct of the shops. And like, if you could stand up wheelie this car park, you were the business. You know what I mean? And then there was a grass bank on on the side of this car park, which was the same as what it was at the school. There was just a bit of grass that had worn out, and you jump onto the pavement, or if you could get into the road, then it was that. So, like I said, it just brought groups of people together. It seemed at that point. There was just pockets of little riding crews everywhere. You know what I mean? And you'd go from riding the school, and you'd go like, hey, should we go down to the shops? And you'd go down there, and there'd be a few lads down there, and you'd do that. And then further up in Winstanley, and again, weirdly enough, it's actually still there, and it's still a riding spot. There's a place. There's a pub called the Poacher, and there's some woods next to it called Poacher Woods, and that was my first experience of meeting some riders who were, this was probably mid to the end of '84.
Okay,
and these riders were like actually digging, like building jumps in this woods.
Oh, right.
and it's still there. It's just been passed from generation to generation, and there's still kids with spades in there digging.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of, when it's right in the middle of an estate, so the trouble that can come with that sometimes, but it's got something like, it's not a piece of council owned land, it's a privately owned piece of land that some guy who used to live in like a hall or somewhere, some like rich guy or whatever, owns this plot of land. And one of the parents from years ago found this out, and that's why it seems to have lasted for
40 years.
Yeah, exactly. I would have been, 9, 10 when I ventured there. Yeah, so 40 years, and there's still, you know what it's like when you ride past some woods and you look in and you know what jumps look like, and it's still pretty active. So yeah, it's really like the scene in Wigan was crazy.
Yeah. When was the first time you sort of you must have gone to Allen's in the early days, right?
Yeah. So that again, it wasn't, when I was like on my cycle pro, when I was swapping parts over, I definitely hadn't been to a BMX shop at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember going to obviously meeting other riders. I remember I went to a Three Sisters BMX track before I went to Allen's. And when I went to Three Sisters BMX track, because they used to have midweek races, and some of the lads who we met who were building jumps in the woods, they were already racing BMX, and that was like with seeing like first time of seeing like a Robinson or a Talker or like a Mongoose or a Super Goose or something like that.
High end.
These guys were already doing it. They've been doing I think from 81, 82, something like that. Some of them probably from 80. So I remember went to Three Sisters track, and obviously then seen more of these kind of bikes, and obviously then the uniforms, and then you're thinking about the magazine that you've seen of going, geez, like this, I can't believe this is it, on my doorstep. And
how far was Three Sisters from where you was?
So it literally was that main road that we had to cross to go to the school. Basically, you rode up that main road, you came to another town called Ashton in Makerfield, and it was literally there. So I could ride from my house to Three Sisters. It probably would take 30 minutes, something like that.
Oh, wow.
So literally up the road. And that became a thing. Like they used to race on a Wednesday, and there'd be 150 people racing on a Wednesday. You know what I mean? I remember seeing that. I went to the track with these lads again, saying to it was no longer I'm crossing the road. I'm asking my mum, can I go further up the road and go to this track or whatever? And yeah, I remember seeing the track, and then there was some other riders there from Ashton who were riding, who we we started hanging around with and riding, years down the line. But then I remember going to like the first Wednesday night race and seeing like all of the units, because everybody was just in like jeans and trainers or whatever and t-shirts. At that point, no one was riding in the week in like in a race kit or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So seeing that for the first time was nuts, and it's kind of like where do you get this stuff from? And this was when I found out about Allen's.
All right.
I went to Allen's. I remember my dad took me there for the first time. This was when the shop was in Hindley, down the side street, just by the little by the stream that runs to the canal in there, like the original Allen's. I remember going in there, and obviously he was a big Robinson and Talker guy, and just everything chromoly and shiny and just all lined up, and then glass cabinets with all like pads and all like the trinkets in, and I'm like, remember my dad was like, how much? But as you kind of always get, and again, I didn't get my next bikes from there, because obviously they were. And you think about it, like I remember a friend of mine he got SE bikes, and it was a PK Ripper, and I think this was like 80. I remember this was one of those lads, and he had a PK Ripper, like the classic aluminium one with like the dark blue forks with like the white landing gear stickers on it, and it had like the camo pads.
Oh yeah,
like the uni seat with like the camo seat cover. But it was like it was almost £1,000 in like 82. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, my dad definitely wasn't spending that kind of money, but I think my next bike was a Silver Fox after that.
Okay.
Yeah, an MT Silver Fox was the one after the Cycle Pro, and I started. I think I did one race on the Cycle Pro, and everybody was like, you can't. I can imagine I'm 9 years old riding a Cycle Pro, like big mags on it, on a winter muddy track or whatever. So then I convinced my dad to get me a lighter bike, and I got this MT Silver Fox, and then started racing on that then. So yeah, cool. But the Allen Physic is one that etched in my mind, because of like stepping into that world was surreal.
Yeah, man. Well, do you think that visiting Three Sisters was the thing that sort of got you into racing most? The first few times?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I'd seen kind of freestyle, but in the magazines, and although we were almost doing a form of freestyle, it was more, but it was dirt jumps. It was like carved out of a grass bank, so it was more related to kind of racing. And then the people who I met early on, they were racers, and we went to Three Sisters. So, excuse me, that definitely played a part in directing me towards racing. And then I remember going to a race. They built. I seen a mad documentary about this the other day. They built a velodrome in Kirby in Merseyside. And they built a dry ski slope, and whoever built it completely wrong, and it was a complete disaster. And they basically took all that stuff off the dry ski slope and turned it into a BMX track. So like the ski slope became the start hill, and they added a BMX track on it. And I remember going there, and in the sports centre, that's when I seen my first like quarter pipe, like what was like late 80s. 6 foot wide, and I remember there was a guy riding it. He was on I can't remember what bike he was on, but I remember he had CW bars, and he was airing pretty high out of it. And it turned out years down the line, I found out that was a guy who actually raced from Liverpool called Tony Fleming, who went on. He went on to be a pro BMX racer. But on that quarter pipe was the very first time I seen Terry Jenkins ride that quarter pipe in that sports centre, which is a pretty good memory as well of just seeing someone. He was like 7 foot airing out of that thing. Pretty, and he was smooth, Terry, as well. So
real smooth. Yeah, amazing. What was that called? That sports? There was. I think I've seen pictures of that online. Maybe.
On what? Sorry.
Of that sport. That was that a club night or something.
Yeah. It was. They used to have. So when they had club stuff races on, they were having like little freestyle contests. Just basically hitting. There was there was a quarter and a kick turn ramp in there.
Yeah.
And there was people in there, and then that ended up turning into a little club and a bit of a competition stuff as well. That was the first time I'd kind of seen that in the flesh as well, which was super impressive.
Oh, nice. And what's like, you was, Grotbags told me you was at the Kellogg's that was at Three Sisters as well.
Oh yeah, so the very first time those guys came over, there was a race going to happen at Three Sisters, and it was on a Monday, and I remember finding out it was on a Monday, and I was like absolutely gutted. It was on no way a school day, and I remember you know what I mean, like. Can I cross the road to go here? Can I go up the road to go here? And then asking the question, can I have a day off school to go and watch some of these guys?
Big deal, yeah.
Like, it's a step too far. But yeah, let's just say I went and I and I watched in awe. This was the one where Eric Root was on Mongoose, Miranda was on Talker, Patterson was on Patterson, Greg Hill was he on? Yeah, I think he just created GHP at this time, but it was the one where they had the names on the number plates. So they all had Haro flow panel number plates, and they had the name on it. And obviously we'd watched them on TV, because Wigan was like the fourth stop. So we'd watched it on TV, and then I'm watching it in my school uniform on Monday, supposed to be in school. And I remember, I was stood behind the start hill at one point. And I remember, Eric Root, walking past me, you know what I mean? White, blue and red Mongoose on a Mongoose Pro class, you know what I mean? A Southern California guy, who you'd seen in magazines and you'd seen on the telly, at Gateshead, where he raced the week before or whatever. Just mind absolutely blown.
Oh, amazing, man. Well, did you take any more days off school to a bit of BMXing back then?
Yeah, lots. Not. Shall we? When I think of my own kids now, they weren't authorized days off, should we say?
Okay.
They definitely became more frequent. It became everything. It became everything.
It sounds like you kind of got the bug for it early, and it became a bit of an obsession as well. What when you do you just used to go and ride on your own, take a day off school and just ride your bike?
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that in the past, and I'd also kind of arranged with other lads and people who you rode with. Sometimes it was to venture out somewhere. You know what I mean? Someone had met some lads. I remember we rode to Southport from Wigan. Once to go and ride Southport Skate Park. because we didn't know that concrete skate park was there, and the word traveled, hey, there's a skate park in South. We rode, you know what I mean, like that classic. Don't do this at home, kids. You know what I mean? It's like you leave the house in your uniform, you got your bag and whatever, and off we go. We're going to Southport. 2 hours to ride there, ride all day, and then don't realize that you're still in Southport when you should be arriving home from school.
Oh no way! Yeah.
So yeah. Explain that one when you get home. But it's it was that, like, it was really that boom time, and I just remember everywhere we were going to see something new or to meet other
different scenes,
bike riders and stuff like that.
Communities like just dotted around.
And I think as well where we live with Alan, and again, just look at Alan still here and absolutely, amazing.
Unreal, yeah.
BMX, and he's still here in Wigan, and we, when it was BMX was the boom in the 80s, he was here in our town, so it was huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah, one of the most important shops, like in the 80s as well, wasn't he? So
yeah,
like that's everyone's coming to your town, right?
Yeah,
because of that shop. So and where does it go from? Like you've got your Silver Fox, and then what you're starting to go to? When do you start going to like other places to race as well as Three Sisters?
So when I started racing on, and again I spoke about this when I did something with Dale, and I never really, I reflect on moments, but I'm shit with dates and all of that kind of stuff, and I didn't realize that everything happened so quickly. So I got that Cycle Pro for Christmas in '84, and then it was probably maybe March time when I'd raced on that, and then probably for my birthday, or maybe just before my birthday, I'd got this Silver Fox, and then somebody, I remember a guy who used to race at Three Sisters. I think I'd crashed and hurt myself, and he brought me home because he lived on the same estate, and he brought me home. And I remember my mum had been and took me in. I remember seeing my dad having a conversation, and he came back in and he was going, "Oh, that guy was saying that you're really good at this, and you know what I mean, and you, like, there's another race somewhere like in Preston or Blackpool or something like that they're going to, and he's happy to take you, they've got a bike rack, and he's happy to take you if you want to go." And I'm like, yeah. So then I remember going to a race in Blackpool, and again it was like, Blackpool's, an hour and 15 minutes drive away. It felt like I was driving to another country or whatever. But then to get there and to see people who I knew from Three Sisters who were there, who had travelled there, and then again opened up a new load of people who I'd not seen before, and it just kind of grew. It grew from there. Like, and again, it's the same now. Like the BMX race scene in the northwest of England, we've got a ton of really active clubs. We've got loads of tracks, and when I think about it, it's always been like that. So it's a real hotspot for BMX racing. So it was more. It was, venturing out to Blackpool, to Preston. I remember going to to Manchester for the first time, to like Rochdale way, to a track out there, and seeing more people out there. And then I raced my first national. This was when, so those Blackpool races, unbeknown to me, were like regional events.
Okay.
Where I'd raced club events at Three Sisters, and they were regional events. And then there was a national event coming to the Three Sisters, and I think it was like the fifth or sixth one of the season. This was like when there was 20 nationals a year, and I raced that national. And again, someone else the guy from the estate had taken me, because my dad was into football and he was a football manager and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And he was doing that. But I remember that conversation of this guy says that you're good. And then I remember being dropped off from that Blackpool race and them having the discussion about the national coming to Three Sisters, and I raced that first national and got fourth. And that conversation after that was the changing point for my dad. You know, this guy saying, you know, he's raced against 70 kids from all over the country today. And he got
amazing,
fourth. Yeah. So my dad was, and I had a bigger trophy or whatever. Yeah. And then my dad.
So you knew, like, when you was racing that cycle pro, but was you winning on that bike? Or coming top three or something? Like, you knew it seems like this guy knew that you was pretty good at it straight away.
Yeah. And again, I don't, it's weird because that's like the job that I do now. You know what I mean? It's like that talent spotter kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I can't remember. I don't think I was winning. I think the biggest thing with me is that I jumped more than maybe any kid that age, because that was just what, you know what I mean? When I talk about, you know, the building site, you know, stacks of breeze block and stuff like that. That's why you get a BMX bike, right? And I think I kind of just took that more as a young kid, of just like sending jumps in the race more than winning. And yeah, I think he just kind of seen I was good on the bike, I guess. Well, I wasn't winning. I don't think I was winning on that bike. I started to win when my bikes got a little bit lighter and I could do a bit more on it. But yeah, he was the guy who obviously took the time to kind of explain to my dad, you know what I mean? That we're going to go here. I'm happy to take him. He's really good, you know, and whatever. My dad didn't know what was what.
That's cool. So, yeah. Nice. And where's it? So you get that fourth at the national, which that must have been like a pretty good feeling, right?
Yeah, and
you remember
again, it was that it opened up that world of there's people coming from all over the country. So I would go there on a Wednesday and there'd be, you know, 70, 80 people racing. And they turned up at this national and there's just cars, caravans. You know, there was 1,000+ races there. And you know that these races have traveled from all over the country. And it was every single time. Like, it was just like, whoa, it's bigger, there's more, you know, and it just became, you know, it did, and it still has. It just takes over your life, and you kind of just run with it because it's what you love. But after that national race, again, Grot Bags and Dale, like the encyclopedias of BMX racing, I went to the next national after that was my dad took me to that national. And again, my dad's first buy into it was taking me to like Bookmore in, you know, I'm sure Bookmore Bats, it's like just down south somewhere anyway.
Yeah.
He drove me like 4.5 hours to this
Bookmore Park,
for his first ever introduction into BMX. And I won that. I won that race, and it was at that race of where. So I'd met Tony Holland and some of the Robinson Allen sponsored riders. Obviously, at this point, I've met them guys, and he approached me and my dad. We were just riding back after a race, and he kind of just said, "Oh, we'd like you to ride for Robinson." You know what I mean? This was my second national race, and we're maybe July, August into my first year of BMX.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
It's quite crazy now when you think about it.
Oh, who asked you, Alan or Tony Holland?
So Tony Holland, who was like Alan's main guy.
Okay.
Like, you know, Tony had been to America with Alan like pre-season to ride, and he'd come back with this really trick, like one of the first Robinson Scott Clark kind of signature bikes. Like it had like trick like Campag, like cranks on it, just like the amazing bike. And I knew Tony, so Tony approached us and basically took us to. There was like a Robinson team vehicle, took us to that. And probably a week later, I went to that Allen shop, the one that I initially visited to pick up my Robinson bike, which is
that's cool, man.
Just,
was that from? So you went from the Muddy Fox to the Robinson?
Yeah.
No way. Big upgrades.
Which was
cool,
again, which I picked up this factory. It was a Robinson Danny Nelson who I went on to race years later down the line when we were like 17-year-old into our pro careers. We raced each other, and his weird, like crazy to think like that's how big BMX racing was in America at this point. He was the same age as me, and he already had a signature bike.
Had his name on the bike, yeah.
That was my first race bike, but it was the chrome, the big fat top tube pads and handlebar pads on it and stuff, like Robinson 6-inch bars, Torque 6-bolt stem. The mistake they made, they put 1 1/8 wheels on it. And we used to, at this point we were riding, handmade jumps and disused coal mines. So that bike that bike went back about 2 days later, and the wheels were mangled on it, and they decided to put 1.5 wheels on it, and then I was away then. So yeah,
amazing.
A trick little mini bike, but with little fat 1.5 wheels on it. So yeah,
more robust.
Game on at that point.
Where did that take you from there? Like, did you go places with a Robinson team, or was your dad still taking you?
So I think I can remember. I think, and again, weird memories. Like I'm not good with dates and stuff like that, but I remember there was. I think there was about maybe 9 nationals left in that year, and I went to all of those races. Some of them I remember going to Herne Bay on that Robinson team bus. That was the first time I went to the race, like on the team bus with the team. And obviously Herne Bay is like way down south as well.
Miles there.
But yeah, raced all of those nationals for the rest of the year.
Cool. Who else was on the team on them trips?
So Tony Holland was on the team. Alan still raced at this point. Craig Burrows, I think he might. So this was Robinson and Talker at this point. So I think Craig Burrows was on Talker at that point. Nathan Lunn was on Talker. Terry Lloyd was on Talker. Who else was on Robinson? Darren Nelson was on Robinson. Scott Vogel was on Robinson. So yeah, it was obviously Alan was one of the the original like kind of factory team kind of setups like that. So he had the best riders, and yeah, raced all the rest of the year at all of those nationals. So then it was traveling all over the country and seeing like being in the northeast of England, like being in Herne Bay down south and meeting new people from down south, and then being in Gateshead 2 weeks later, or like Teesside or some Redcar or something like that, northeast. And just like the thought of like not even thinking that I'm doing this, but then going, oh, that's crazy. Like they're from all the way down here and they've traveled here. And, you know what I mean? Like this like all this group of people traveling to all these different races. But yeah, it's the same today, but it just when you're first experiencing that as a young lad, it's
and when what would you be, 11 or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty enlightening for an 11-year-old to be doing all that traveling as well. Like,
Yeah.
especially then, like people were
Yeah,
much more localized. And who was you? What was your race results like then? And who was like your main competition in them Robinson days?
So there was like local riders, like used to, like again, a guy called Darren Reed who still races now. There's a guy called Stuart Hazelden, who I still know owns what's it called? Rivington Brew Company. So he owns his own beer brewing company. And again, a guy called Matt Middleton, who owns, his dad owned Middleton Cycles in Ormskirk. He now runs that cycle shop, so literally 20 minutes away. But we used to compete against each other. And then obviously when you spread further afield, there was, you know, people like CJ Butler, Jason Spare, you know, people, loads of, you know, fast racers who you then start to battle for national wins and for overall titles. And again, I think from memory, you know, it was all kind of healthy competition. And more so when we'd travel to different places, like when I started meeting people like Chico. So I met like Chico when I was probably like 10, 11, something like that. But we would, and I guess why we've been friends for so long is because we had a similar outlook on BMX. Like we'd be there to race, but you'd be asking the local kids, you know, is there any jumps anywhere or whatever? And you'd be venturing out, like you were there all weekend. So you'd kind of venture out of these places where you'd never visited before with local kids and go and find a worn out grass bank, what they used to jump off, like what it was when I went to the primary school. And so it was, I definitely kept the bike rider kind of aspect to it.
You're still riding the bike, it's not just on the track,
And even and again, even like that Three Sisters crew, like in summer, you know, if that's where we were going to go to the track for the day. Like we'd be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'd I remember one point we'd wait till it go dark, and we'd want to race before we go home to see who knew the track the best because it was dark. You know, like things like that. So you'd ride all day, but it wasn't. We weren't racing all day. Like we were sessioning just all day, like jumping a tabletop or jumping a double or something like that. So it was definitely at that point the racing was a massive part of it, but it definitely was still about riding the bike with your mates and sessioning.
Time, because it seems like that I was going to ask you how that developed, but it seems like you just spent so much time on your bike that it was natural. The style that you ended up riding seemed like in complete flow of like what you were doing as an early BMX rider. Like there's not a conscious effort to do that, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it's weird again with the job that we do now. Like all of these things come into play. You know what I mean? When you're working with younger bike racers now, like it, you know, the learning through play. You know what I mean? They're not, you know, the age of the riders that I work with, they're not full-time professional bike racers, you know what I mean? And therefore don't like play with it and experiment, and you've got time, and you know what I mean? The biggest thing is that you're enjoying riding the bike and you're learning new stuff and you're developing, and this is all modern like kind of terminology of what we know now, but what it was, we were just doing it.
Of course. A lot of things have been learned since we was just like didn't even know what was what, you know. It was all like I'll try and just 180 or whatever. It's the same, isn't it? It's the same thing. It's like, and then decades of that pass, and then people have like, oh well, if you lean this, and then it comes out, doesn't it? You know what's going on. But
and definitely again venturing out like at those bike races with with the locals to go and ride their spots. You know what I mean? And again, you know, like you weren't even thinking it at that point. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, the lip's different. You just, you know, it was just like stuff. You just ride in and you just blast it because it was just a jump to flat. You know what I mean? And you'd find out the first time you hit it, like, oh, it's not the same as mine.
That's
not the same as a jump that we have that looks like that or whatever. And you just, again, it's all around, you know, the enjoyment of learning and failing and being laughed at and laughing at other people and messing up and stuff. Just, you know, that real good. And like I said before, it's just that the bike creates the group of people, and then the group of people, you know, create.
It's a circle, totally. And what did you that year for Robin? Was it a year or 7 months or something? How long did you last there?
So the rest of that year, I ended up winning like national #1 title in that first year.
Okay.
Which again, to me, it wasn't, oh yeah, it's cool, like I won #1, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a big thing for me. I'm now being given, you know, a kit and a bike, and then when it breaks, it gets taken back to the shop and given back. You know what I mean? It was kind of, everything was really cool because I was just riding really, you know, really like a really nice bike or whatever. And then I'd met Chico at this point. I'd met like Nathan Lunn at this point. He rode for Talker. He was a really like cool, stylish bike racer. Fraser Campbell at this point rode for Kuhara. He was younger brother of Craig. When we'd be at national races, that's who we'd hang out with. And part of that group was Sam Jarvis, who I think Dale's just done a podcast with the Jarvis family. The Jarvis family were the ones who Amico Mongoose. Yeah. And then there was a race. I think there was a race in Olympia. I think it's called the Champion of Champions. And and that, like, it was, you know, I was still a young lad who was just running around with his mates causing mischief probably in Olympia, and the conversation happened between my dad and Sue Jarvis, and the next thing I'm going to ride for Amico Mongoose, which at that point was like Andy Ruffle rode for Amico Mongoose. That was the team, right? Yeah. So it was that was huge, and it was a bit. I think that was the first time I felt kind of, I was kind of happy there. You know what I mean? I was kind of happy with on my Robinson and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden I'm getting this other bike and I'm not sure why, and you know, all that kind of stuff, and then kind of getting this new bike and getting used to a new bike, and it feels a little bit different, and just not really understanding it. But then you know, it's like when you get a new bike, like 30 minutes later, it feels like the old bike, and you're away again. So then you stop thinking about that. But yeah, the Mongoose one was Amico Mongoose was a big one. That was the first time I went to. I don't think for the first year. And the weird thing is, I don't remember how long I rode for Amico Mongoose.
I remember seeing you in ads. Must have been 86 or something. You had the ads in Action Bike, I think.
Yeah, we were
or maybe you was like a couple of you. Yeah. But I distinctly remember seeing, because I didn't know until I looked recently, and I was like, oh, no way. Yeah.
So I think it might have been 2 or 3 years max. I think, but in that period, that's when I definitely felt I was still stoked on the fact of BMX, and I was still like a rabbit in the headlights. But like that was my first European. Went to Europe to race, you know what I mean, and kind of I remember going to a race in Holland and being lined up for my race, and there was kids who were like 2 feet taller than me with a mustache, like 10, 11 or whatever, you know what I mean, and just that kind of, it's the first time I felt like kind of threatened by BMX racing, it was just something new that I hadn't felt before. Like kind of, I'm in a foreign country racing my bike, and it doesn't feel the same because I'm really nervous about how I'm going to race. But obviously, you manage. It's that first experience, but I always remember that that different feeling and it being on Mongoose. But it was because they'd given me the opportunity to go and race a bike race in Europe. But that always sticks in my mind. If that's the first time it felt a bit uncomfortable.
More serious, so to speak. I would have thought.
Yeah.
But what did they like? What was the difference? What were they offering you more than Allen's? Just more travel and stuff.
Yeah, so like unbeknown to me at that point, because again, it's not. It wasn't. I was 10, 11 years old, and the conversation is between my parents and
of course,
or whatever. And what you find out years later that that was the thing with Allen's was providing me with product and all of that kind of stuff, which was absolutely great. But now that we were on this national series kind of thing, the money, to travel all over the country or whatever, then was costing money because by then my dad's into it and my mum's into it. And they're supporting me with it. So, it costs a lot more money. And basically, so for Mongoose, they were just a team who would basically cover all your expenses, like your entry fees, travel expenses, all that kind of stuff, and provide you with all the products. So it was that next kind of step up, really, into that. But it was, again, Pete Middleton was a big guy in that team, one of their pro guys that he was kind of took me under his wing a little bit. And obviously I'd already known Sam. And then there was guys from Southport, two brothers, John Greaves and Steve Greaves. Their dad was an actual rep for Amoco. So he was a bike rep that would travel around the country and, try and get Amoco bikes into bike shops and whatever. So that was a pretty cool deal. But again, like that, it sounded like a negative of that was a memory of me feeling different about BMX being in that situation, in that foreign race. But I was still racing and riding my bike with all my mates when I was at home. So that that was still the real enjoyment of hanging out with your mates and going to Three Sisters on a summer's day or going building some jumps in the woods. When that Kellogg stuff happened, after that, like the crew of lads who we were with, then we actually built like a mini BMX track in the woods with like a start gate with like scaffold planks for a start gate. And when they used to walk along, like the camera guy would walk along the front of the gate, like we'd be playing that kind of stuff, And that for me, that's the kind of the thing that you loved about BMX, being in the woods with your mates. You've got a load of jumps. You know what I mean? At this point, I've got I had a sick Robertson Danny Nelson, and then at some point, I've got a really cool chrome mongoose mini bike or whatever. But we're still in the woods, acting like
acting like you weren't one of the guys.
Thinking. I was Travis Chippers when I was on the Robinson, and now I'm Eric Reed who walked past me when I was sagging school. You know what I mean? It's that that's the kind of stuff that's really, really good memories about it.
Cool, man.
Thanks for listening. We've got a Patreon page, so if you could show us any support, we'd be most grateful. The link's below. A lot of work goes into these shows, so anything you could do would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Well, and who did you hang out with on the Mongoose team? Pete Middleton mostly, was it? Because he's from down here, isn't he?
Yeah, well, that was mainly at races. Yeah, that was mainly at races because he was, at this point, Andy was, I think, was this the point where BMX started and all of that kind of stuff, and the freestyle stuff had blown up, so he wasn't racing as much. And Pete was like the main guy at the races, and he would be the guy who'd be helping me out, at the giving my dad information around like gearings and all that kind of stuff, and just being really supportive, really. But again, it was the same crew, like it was Chico, Nathan, Fraser,
Okay.
all of those guys. Still, we'd still be hanging out at the race, practicing together. Saturday. Then already chatting to locals to see whether there's any local riding spots we can go and ride. So it always come back to what it was. You know what I mean? The change was always, I always felt the change of going from one team to another, but quite quickly it came back to what it was of riding bikes with your mates and racing bikes.
Oh, nice, wow. And so how long did that last then?
I think the Mongoose thing lasted. I think it was about 3 years, and I think it ended because I think Amoco finished. As a company. I think as the bike company, because obviously Amoco was. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing Dale's thing might say a bit more about it, but I don't know because obviously I was a kid. But I can remember thinking that Amoco was the British company. That's what.
It's distributor, I think. Yeah,
and Amoco closed, and that was it. It kind of I moved on from that point. And
did you meet? Was Pepe on the team when you was?
Yeah.
Did you meet him?
Yeah. So I met Pepe and Mackie as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he was the younger kid. Met those two. Again, we'd do like shows, like promotional shows, like we'd go to events. And obviously those guys would be there. So like some of the race team would be there and doing some jumps and stuff. Like it was like a bit of a box jump, and then like the classic setup, like the quarter, the box jump,
trick ramp.
The trick ramp, and we'd do some of that kind of stuff. And that's where I met those guys. Yeah, real fond memories of those as well. Yeah,
Pepe was a character.
Yeah.
And then where did you go from there? Like when Amoco finishes, then what happens?
So I think from there, there was a team that was developing not a bike company. It was more of a private kind of team, and some of the riders, and I guess this is the switch of where BMX started to take a little bit of a nosedive, because I remember there was some guys who were still on Robinson that had gone from Robinson, and a couple of them were riding for this independent team. This guy seemed to have money and was creating this team. And I remember I got a bike from Hot Wheels, and then it never materialized. And again, right before the season, I ended up, I can't remember. I think it might have been Darren Wood who had something to do with it. I ended up riding for SE, which when I think about it, it's sick, but it was like the briefest kind of like sponsor thing ever, because from then I went on to ride for Hot Wheels. I think SE was being imported and distributed by Shiner at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
And he ended up getting a bike. It was like a black Mini Ripper. And it was like black with gold graphics on it. It was really like, think about it, still have these bikes now. But
yeah, amazing.
You should just give them away. And then all of a sudden I ended up with Hot Wheels was obviously huge at that point. Importing loads of different bikes and stuff like that. And I went on to ride for them for a number of years, but for a number of different like things that they were doing. I think the first time I rode for them, they were importing JT race kit, and they had a JT team. I remember I rode a free agent bike, but I rode for the JT team, and then I went from there to ride for free agent, but it was through Hot Wheels on a free agent bike. And then I ended up back on Robinson, I think, after that. And because Robinson had started coming in again through not through Alan. I don't know what had happened there, but it was a Robinson thing through Shiner. So again, it was definitely that period of where there was things dropping away, and there was a lot of change going on. And there was definitely, the numbers were kind of falling away as well at kind of national racing. And I think it had, BMX had its 80s peak, and it was kind of starting to plateau off a little bit, even drop off a little bit. There was a definite change.
I was going to say that might have been because Alan's slowed down with BMX stuff at some point, didn't they? They got more into skate music and stuff. It could have been around that same point.
Yeah, it was, because I remember he moved from that Hindley shop, and he moved to Wigan. He moved into Wigan town centre, and he. I remember I bought my first. It was weird because I bought my first skateboard from there, but I remember going, because I started getting into skating because some of my mates had stopped BMXing and started skateboarding. I remember getting a Powell and Peralta. I'm going to say Underhill skateboard.
Okay,
yeah. So I remember getting but the full. It was again for a Christmas present, but I remember going collecting it with my mum from Allen's, and it was a very different kind of thing, called the record bins and stuff like that, where you'd search for records. And the skate shop. I think I'd like to say the skate shop was kind of just in the back, and then there was just some bike stuff upstairs. But it was definitely a changed bike shop from the shop in Hindley, which was just pretty much BMX race bikes, full on. So yeah, it was definitely that changing period, late 80s.
Okay. Well, what was the general perception of BMX riders at that point when it started to decline? Can you remember?
Yeah, well, there was definitely a period where it was, you know what I mean? You're thinking to yourself, because you're a little bit, I'm heading, teen into my, I'm into my teens at that point, and you're kind of you're seeing and feeling a change to this thing that's impacted your life. And yeah, there was definitely a different vibe around it. There was a lot more skaters around. There was a lot, you know what I mean? There was people that didn't. It wasn't, if you think about then, there was stuff there was BMX on the telly quite a lot for that period, and people knew what it was. You know what I mean? And that was no longer happening. And you were dealt differently with jumping over the fence to get into a school, to ride a jumper grass bank or whatever. The people acted differently towards us, as a group of young people. We were seen as feral kids, you know what I mean? Where it was just cool before. No one was bothered. And people would stop and watch. You know what I mean? People were moaning about what you were doing, and hanging out of car windows, calling you all kinds of names, jumping down the road or whatever. So it was definitely, a different feel to it. And I do remember thinking, oh man, is this going to end? Is this same?
Yeah, I had that as well. Yeah.
And I think that's when, because I did skate there was a period where I did skate more than I rode my bike. I still raced. I was still racing and I was still competing, but I just skated more than what I rode when I was home. Maybe that's because of my friends were skating.
Yeah.
And I was doing that. But there was definitely a period, because I remember when I went to high school, our high school was built you to the ground floor, you'd go down. It was below ground level, so you'd go down steps. But the whole footprint of the school building was completely. So if you think about the road level and the steps coming down, the grass being this, there was concrete blank banks, not transition bank, but flat bank, all the way round the footprint of the school. So all grey concrete flat banks. So there was hips, there was all kinds of stuff there. And I because I remember riding my bike. That was one of the spots we go and ride a bike. But I found myself, I'd take my skateboard to school, and like at lunch and break time, I'd skate rather than ride my bike on those banks. So there was definitely a change at that point.
Oh man!
And a lot of my peers had stopped riding and stopped racing at that point as well. You know what I mean? Like cars, girls,
age,
jobs, all that kind of stuff. So they'd all fallen by the wayside as well. So there was definitely a real big shift.
Yeah. What do you think kept you in it, like at that point?
I think again, just that love of the feel
Of the bike,
the feel of riding the bike. And I remember I spent quite a bit of time, like, would ride with a lot less people and a lot smaller crew, and there was a lot of times I'd ride a lot more on my own. You know, and I remember being in those woods where we had that BMX track. I remember being in those woods digging on my own. You know what I mean? For the most part, for a period of it. But it was just, again, I'm guessing for me, you know, on reflecting on it, it was just that feel of riding the bike, that feeling that it gave me, that just kept me in it. Yeah. Because I did it again for another period of time, like rode, and at that point I was a pro bike racer at that time, and I was training and riding on my own for the most part.
Yeah, but that's a bit further on, right? That early 90s, or when did you turn pro? Like 90 something, right?
So 92, like the end of 91 into 92.
Okay, so quite earlier than what I thought. Yeah. What was like how small did the race scene get? Like, I suppose that would have been it, right? 90, 91, 92 or so would have been the smallest, right?
Yeah, I mean, nationally, it was still happening nationally. You know, the numbers were a lot less, but there was still a good few hundred riders turning up at a race, which was clearly different to stuff that we'd seen, but it was still really, active. It was just locally that you felt it more, like within the local BMX clubs in the Northwest where I'd go. You know, where you go to a club race in Preston, you know what I mean, and there'd be like, you know, there'd been 120 people there, like, you know, 2 years before, and you're down to like 30 people there. So like a real visible change and an impact. And again, that's when some clubs, like the likes of Preston and Blackpool, you know, there's all BMX tracks there now, but they're not the original, like Preston Pirates BMX Club, Blackpool BMX Club. They're new build tracks that were built, you know, 10, 12 years ago. You know, so BMX clubs and BMX tracks, you know, started to get ploughed, and housing was being built on it. So yeah, really, really changing time. But again, I think being based where I was based and having all these little spots, even if a lot of it was, you know, with a smaller crew or on your own, it still gave me the feeling of I love riding the bike, and I just kept doing it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though, isn't it? Like when you think about that overall, like Allen's has pretty much almost stopped selling BMX stuff. You know, there's no one to ride with. You're digging on your own. Like, you can tell like how small it's actually got. It's 30 people at the track, like from your 150 or whatever. Like, big. Is it like a lot of perseverance to keep doing that thing, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think now, and again, I think it was that I didn't. My friendship group where I lived were like the bike with BMX guys, and I didn't have. I found like when people start and that crew kept becoming smaller and smaller, I didn't have friends outside of my BMX friends, and I guess there was a period of that where that was also something that probably kept me riding my bike, because that's all I had unbeknown to me at that point. I still love riding my bike or whatever, but thinking of it as a 50-year-old man now, probably going, well, you didn't have any other friends. You know what I mean? So, but you still had all these places where you'd rode for all of these years, and you still raced, and you were still winning bike races like nationals and winning national number ones, and it just kind of carried on. And I'm glad it did, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, whose riding was you looking at, like, as an influence at these times? Like, did you look at certain people and be like, oh, that dude's pretty cool, I'd like to do it like him, or like, what are the formative sort of years coming up?
So again, like before that, like I remember, obviously BMX magazines, but it was those, it was, that same news agents, what I was telling you about before, the first time they got like the American BMX Action or BMX Plus or something like that. And you're seeing, I always, you look at the pro guys are the ones like looking at like the likes of Eric Roop, who I'd seen all those years before, but this era coming up was like the Doug Davis, the Mike Kings, those full factory, like all American California guys in, like Mike King in his Haro kit, like in a Southern California, orange clay track with that blue sky in the picture, you know what I mean? Just like, but then what those magazines were really good at as well was showcasing younger riders. So there was a guy on Kuhara called Derek Garcia. There's like classic pictures of him. Grot Bags was on about it the other day. There's a classic picture of him like folding like a table over this corner jump at this race. There was another kid, he was on Hutch and then he went to GT, called Brit Dude. And again, people who I ended up racing against years later, there's a guy on Profile called Shelby James, who is like a multiple world champion. But I'd seen this kid in a magazine when I was 9 or 10. And then like I'm at the World Championships in Florida in '89, and I'm racing against this kid he's then on Murray at that point. But then, like looking, loads of idols. But again, like growing up, like we had a really, like Tony Holland was, I remember the first time I seen Tony when he fresh back from America riding his bike. He used to do like these real clip, like turn downs, like mid 80s, you know what I mean? He's just like, that was real. But then his really stylish kind of racing style. And that's what attracted me to the likes of Mike King. And, I like that kind of stylish kind of racer kind of look. So loads of real, like, and again, I think about it, the BMX pluses, and I'd not been, I'd been to America for a race, but I didn't know anything about what was going on in America's like national scene. But I knew I was still getting this magazine every month, and there were still pictures of, it still looks like it's as big as ever in California, so that kind of thing. It was probably, like, unbeknown to me then, was probably still a driving force of this is what I still want.
Yeah, you still want to do that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it was a combination of different things of not having any mates who didn't ride BMX bikes and still enjoying riding the bike, but still seeing something that I alluded to, like I want.
You aspired to do. When we got American mags, back then when we was completely like finished, it still looked like it was happening in America. Didn't you remember that? Like it's still going. Like it wasn't, but like it looked like it. So
you didn't realize that Pete Lonkarovich and the whole of the amateur Harrow team no longer existed because Mike King was just the guy. You know what I mean? There was no more big budget to have all that because he was the main guy and he was the promoter. So man.
When did you was there ever a point where it must have been a point in your racing where you realized that you weren't going to outpower people and you had to win, like, by doing something your own way, in your own style? Like, when did that become a realization, or did that just evolve?
Well, it did at some point, because and again, when you reflect on it now, it's like I became like I was. And it's funny because if anyone listens to this who I coach now, they'll laugh at it. You know, I started to become a bit lazy at racing. Really, like I'd get past at the finish line, you know what I mean, and just kind of whole shot a race, and then just kind of get a bit of a flow going around the track, and then, you know, kind of all of a sudden, like I've just been pipped at the finish line and being pissed off about it, but then trying to be cool about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I did it. You know, I did a table over this jump into the second turn or whatever. Yeah. But then kind of realized that I could do a little bit more to create speed, and it didn't have to be pedaling. You know what I mean? So I started to. And again, we're like just looking at what other riders, because at this point we were getting videos from America as well, like seeing like VHS videos of people racing and stuff like that, and kind of looking at what riders are doing and going over jumps, and people like Mike King of looking at how much they're using their body, you know, going through the lip of the jump, down the back of the jump. So I just started to like emulate that, and all of a sudden I'd created this thing of like, you know, everyone's going, oh, it's super smooth, it's stylish. It's you can go, you make the bike go really fast and not necessarily pedal that much. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which for me, you know, at that point I was a bit over pedaling. I'd been brought up racing in the 80s where you'd sprint, you know, it'd be one jump on one straight, whereas now the tracks were designed differently, and you could actually pedal less and generate speed through having good flow and, you know, pushing through a lip and catching good backside and pushing through. So definitely that again was a transition for me, and again something else that brought a really good feeling that I was. Yeah,
it looks good. It looks good when you watch it. Yeah,
made me carry on. It was a new feeling. You know what I mean? Like we've gone through the thing of blasting off, you know, grass banks onto flat ground. Then you got to your first BMX track where there was one jump on each straight, and then all of a sudden BMX had evolved, and I created. Yeah, you know, I didn't create a new riding style, but my riding style developed a little bit more technical abilities.
Yeah, evolved. Yeah, you know, like Grotbags credits you with the first manual that he ever saw. Did I tell you that one?
No.
Yeah. He said he didn't even know what it was called. He was like,
wow.
Yeah. But I guess he means like over something, right?
Well, right, manual over jump.
Yeah, because he probably wasn't. I mean, and a freestyle manual at that point would have been like, would have been bitch crank your way to wherever he was. So it did look completely different. Like he was probably like front end low, leant right over the back, like more like people do it now. But yeah, he come up with that. He was like, I didn't even know what it was when I saw it. I don't know where it was, but yeah, it was cool. Right?
No, that's pretty. That's nuts.
Yeah, man. What else we got? What we got next? I'm lost where I am. When did the Titan thing? What was Titan? Like, where did your sponsor thing go at this point? Like, so I'm guessing you've won your age groups and you're turning pro, and it's like what 90, 92 or something. Like, when did you start? Like, was you always winning consistently up until you turned pro?
So I think the second time I went back to Robinson when it was with Shiner, I think that was like 89 possibly, because I moved to Titan at the end of 89 into 90, and I was with them through 90 into 91, because I won the World Championships in Norway in 1991 with Titan, and that, so 1990 was the first time we went to like the ABA grounds in Oklahoma City in America. Like, you know, they call it the greatest race on earth. The first time we went there, and, you know, we met like Rich Bartlett and, you know, some of the, you know, the POWs and all of that kind of stuff at that race. And then again at the World Championships the year after in Norway, like Brian Brian Foster and Keith Mulligan, who we raced each other, and all of those guys would come to the World Championships as well. So that's when we were meeting, guys who we'd seen in those US magazines further afield and making those connections. And Titan was actually it was a bike company from Oregon in the US. Okay. Owned by a guy called Bob Fury, and it had been imported by Martin and Stephen Murray's parents. So Cynthia and Jeff were importing Titan bikes for a couple of years, a few years before that. And it was a pretty, they were bringing bikes in as they start with, like pre-selling bikes, and then the orders would come and they'd dish those bikes. So there was more people with Titan bikes with kit, and it became this thing. Then they'd have like stalls at, like at national races selling product and stuff, and it grew from there. And it became quite a, it seemed like this was a point of where it had started to pull itself out the hole a little bit. And all of a sudden we were back on, we were definitely back on the rise again. And the Titan thing was a big deal. Like Killer Team, like Martin, Stephen Murray, Neil Wood, Jamie Staff, Adele Croxon was on the team. Like, a lot of national titles, and probably the national number one team. And then I kind of moved. I turned professional in 1992 when I left Titan, and that's when I rode for a French bike company called Sun. After that.
All right, it's quite early then, yeah. Because when was the first picture you got in a mag that wasn't racing? Was it a fence ride?
So that was at the World Championships on the second time around on Robinson. So in that pocket of like 89 into 90.
Okay.
So that would have been, that must have been the summer of 89, I guess. The World Championships in, the race car circuit at Paul Ricard Stadium. The track was built in the middle of that circuit, and at the World Championships, and that was a picture. Again, we'd found a bag.
Yeah. I remember that sequence. Yeah, it was a sequence, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my first on a race bike with pads and a number plate on it, but a non-race pick. I didn't realise that was probably the first one.
Yeah, I thought that might have been. Yeah, I didn't know that. I always thought Titan was like a European company. I didn't even know it was from the US. Yeah.
Well, I think probably the UK and what Martin and Stephen's mum and dad did probably kept it going, because I don't think there was definitely a point when it wasn't a big thing at all in America anymore, and it was still a big deal here. And obviously they were selling to other bike shops in Europe and stuff like that. And there was a French Titan team at some point as well. Okay. We went and actually stayed. And when Jamie was on the team, when the first time we went to America, when we went to the ABA Grands and drove back to Huntington Beach with all the POWs, we actually went to the Christmas Classic race in Columbus. And while we were that way out, Bob Fury had paid for us to go from Ohio to Oregon to visit the Titan factory.
All right,
where it was made, and we hung out there I think we were there for about a week. I remember because it was myself, Jamie Staff, who was on the team, and Grotbags was with us as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And what was that trip? The first time you saw like real trails?
So first time I'd seen sheep. Yeah, was on that trip. When we went out, I stayed with. We went to stay at the POW house, and someone had dogs, and I had an allergic reaction to dogs, so I ended up going to live with Robin Morales out in Moreno Valley. yeah, that was kind of the era of POWs like Brian Allen, Todd, Clymer. They all lived in the POW house, and Sheep was the spot. Like this was the Mecca again, you know. And went and experienced that. But yeah, that was the first time again seeing people manual through, you know, through multiple rollers and like kind of bump jumps and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was 91. Yeah, probably 91 into 92. That yeah.
And then you end up on Sun all this time. When do you like start frequenting skate parks more? Not yet. You're still mostly like just jumping and stuff.
No, well, I think you know, we'd always, like, again, when we were out at those races all over the country, because I remember going to Harrow, like, for the first time, and that was before. Yeah, so, you know.
Slough, you'd have been probably at Slough, right? And then Harrow.
And again, venturing out and just riding different things. And again, just experimenting with stuff. And these were all the things, again, that kept me going, of just the feel of riding a bike and riding new stuff and riding different stuff. And we were definitely riding, you know, I'd definitely ridden quarter pipes, like we say, in Southport Skate Park, the stuff at Kirby. Then there was more. Rathbone Skate Park was built in Liverpool.
I remember it.
I'd definitely been on road like that bowl. I'd been to Rom at that. I'd been to Rom at like we used to ride Rom Skate Park when.
Well, there was a track there, wasn't there? So
yeah, when I was on Mongoose, Amoco Mongoose, so we'd ride Rom Skate Park like that. You know, 80. 85, 86, like on a mini bike with little skinny tires and stuff like that. So it's definitely something we'd always done. But definitely it was in that Sun era of where skate parks became more of a thing. There wasn't just like the concrete skate parks. I remember the first little ramp work skate park and going and riding there. And again, just something I've always done. It's not, you know, there's a very brief period where and it was probably towards the end of me going, I'm just a BMX racer. I'm not doing anything more now. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it didn't have the same feeling. And I guess it was the beginning of the end of the race career. So it made me feel different. But then again, when I retired as a professional BMX racer, it reignited my love of riding bikes and going to the skate park.
All
that kind of stuff.
And how dangerous was it, like riding in sort of Liverpool and those areas back then? Was that like people get their bikes nicked a lot, or was it all right over
there? Again, I was always at that point, like going to Rathbone Skate Park, I was always with older guys, and there was trouble. And there was trouble everywhere. You know what I mean? Like there was always scraps. Like you know, the skate parks in a park or whatever, and there'd always be, not necessarily between the bike riders. You know what I mean? But there was always some trouble somewhere, and be it like one of the lads would like start heckling, and then someone would come over, and then you'd end up involved somehow, or something like that. But yeah, I mean. It's similar now. There's everyone just sees it different, right? It's just
I think it's worse. It was worse then. It was for us anyway. But it might be.
Well, we used to go and ride like whenever there was a race in London. We had this thing, and I don't know where it came from. I think it was when like Grot Bags and there's a guy called Dean Idios, and I think they were cycle couriers for some period.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean? And we'd go and ride like the city of London, like through the night. Would turn up at like 11 o'clock, midnight, and we'd ride till the sun come up. You know what I mean? I think about some of the stuff like we'd encountered on rides of like people falling out of nightclubs and us flying down the street and stuff like that. Just absolute chaos. But yeah, going riding like the South Bank, and there used to be this other, I think it might have been on the South Bank, but further down, it's like a bridge. It was like a massive big flat bank to wall ride. all those spots. Like
Yes,
Meanwhile,
it was next to it.
yeah. Or like Meanwhile, and stuff like that. Like ride everything.
Excellent. What did you ride Westway track when you was racing? Was that still there?
No, I
Right.
rode. That was like kind of just when I was getting in to kind of BMX here.
Okay.
That's something like the first time I went to London to a bike race that I remember hearing people talking about it. And then obviously years down the line when, you come across old magazines or old footage of it or something like that. Yeah. But I never went there.
It stayed for a while, but they stopped racing on it, and then they ploughed it for like a few years after. And the sun thing, how did that come about? Because that was fall back to like boom time again, right? Or slowly.
Yeah, just again me kind of staying in that kind of where it definitely changed, where numbers were less, bike companies weren't around, like having a sponsor for a year, then changing every single year. The Titan thing brought some, there was like 3 years of good stuff going on there, and it felt good again. And then I'd continued to win. I'd won like a European title, and in '91 won my first world title. And there was this clear French takeover happening in BMX racing. Like these guys who like super stylish, and like the French guys had the bikes set up in a certain way and rode a certain way, and everybody was into it. And there was a guy called Christophe Levesque who owns Chase Bicycles now, and like he was the big French superstar at that time. And we were in a race. Like I'd met him, a few times just to say hi or whatever. He didn't speak much English, and there was a European Championships in Italy, and he spoke a bit more English then. He'd been going to the US and been learning English a little bit more. And he just said that after one of my races that somebody wanted to meet me, and it was the guy Max Commensal, who now owns Commensal Bikes, who owned Sun at the time, was the guy who made Sun. Just he introduced me to him, and he said, "We'd like you to ride for Sun." And the next thing, me and my dad were sat in his office in the south of France, and I'm still quite naive. I'm a bike racer, just doing what he does. And then all of a sudden, my dad was a market trader, so my dad was doing the wheeling and dealing, and I came away as a full factory, professional BMX racer.
No way.
From that point, So again, that was another time I felt it made me feel different. I just started to get this really good feeling back, and then all of a sudden, the realization of going, oh, it's my job.
Got serious again,
You know what I mean? And it again, that didn't. And the thing with that was they were really professional. They were a bike manufacturer, but Max was a real team builder. Everything, the promotion of the brand was built around the team, and he was really supportive of the team and really supportive of the individual riders, you know what I mean, and reassuring them, like any issues, then you could go and talk to him. So and he was another one who was about the bike riding, you know what I mean. He wanted you to be, results, but he was also into the bike riding. He was a former Paris Dakar rally winner, the motorbike guy. So he from a bike background, and clearly into bikes and riding bikes and whatever. And I was there for 9 years.
Oh wow, yeah. It looked cool that like all the uniform and stuff and the bikes, they did all look very stylized. I thought. Was you is that the first time that you didn't have to work whilst riding, or did you have a? Oh really?
From that point, that was my job. So when I rode for Titan, I was having, like, they were paying my mum and dad like some expenses and stuff like that, to entry fees and stuff. But I'd just left school, my dad. When I was a market trader, so I was helping my dad out at weekends, and then I'd get odd jobs with my dad's friends. I remember one of them was a guy who used to fit like false ceilings and stuff. I remember doing some work doing that kind of stuff, and then probably for again for a really short period, and then all of a sudden, at this race, this opportunity comes, and it was a real quick, 2 weeks after the race. 2 weeks after the race, we'd signed this contract, and I was I didn't.
That's unreal. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that. Where did that guy get his money from? Racing the Paris Dakar, or?
So I think the original.
They seem to have loads of money.
Yeah, the original money was obviously from his sporting career, but really quickly, Sun became a huge bike brand in France, and there was again. It's like when you think of the 80s of the Diamondback, the Mongoose, the GT. They're selling a lot of units of bikes, and therefore it generates income. And he chose, and he still does it now. He with his bike company now, he promotes the brand, the product through his riders and through his team, which is a really it's a really cool way of doing it. But again, the bigger the company got, the more like co-sponsors that we had. So like Sun Chippy, like Chippy was that French clothing brand that was super fashionable like at that time. But like, in the 80s, like a pair of Chippy jeans might be £100. So it was like it was a high-end like brand, you know what I mean? So there were clearly other people putting money into what he was doing. I think for 3 years after it wasn't Sun Chippy anymore, we were sponsored by Nike for like 3 years. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So really that was, a pretty big deal. But then like we were sponsored by like Veta Seats, which is like an Italian seat company, like Salutalia or whatever, like big companies, because at this point he had like a cross-country mountain bike team and a mountain bike downhill team. So it was a big deal. And I was there for 9 years. That's where I ended my racing career with them. Yeah.
We used to sell them in Cyclone, the mountain bikes.
Yeah.
I think the rep was his name Nick, maybe a French guy. He was the rep was French, like.
Yeah.
He was cool. Yeah, he was a good dude. Yeah.
Yeah, because they started. They employed reps here, and that's what the aim was. That's why they sponsored me, because I was the only non-French person on the team, and me racing here was promoting the brand here. Then they had that rep starting to go around and selling and trying to sell products. So yeah, that was the whole reason.
Oh man! What was the bike you were riding then? Was that Christoph's bike or something?
No. So they basically made all our team bikes, all the BMX bikes, all of the mountain bike team bikes were all handmade in Sengadens in France. And again, this brought back, it was my first experience of it, of going back to, the Robinson Danny Nelson and the Robinson Scott Clark. This was me having input on to what, like the head angles and seat angles and stuff like that, and talking about materials and bike flex and all of that kind of stuff. Like they developed so many things, like the first like suspension carbon fiber fork for the mountain bikes. And I always remember like this test like wheel, like this oval wheel, just going pressing this fork, like testing it like for weeks or whatever to see whether it worked. But then having guys, like with jigs and stuff welding, like you'd see your bike being welded and then
totally in house. So
that was that was kind of living that dream of being a full-time BMX racer
man.
Traveling the world. That's where training started to come into it, and kind of the pressure that came with it. But I think, again, with what I do now, I managed to always go back to why I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I enjoy the feel of riding a BMX bike, whether that be on a track, whether that be riding an indoor skate park, riding a bowl, or riding trails, or it was always, and I always did that for the most part of all of that time until towards the end, when I think I knew my racing career was coming to end, so I got a bit burnt out on BMX as a whole. But when I stopped the racing, it kind of reignited and this was the times of like the urban games and NAS.
Yeah.
And there was loads of trails all over the country, and I was on DC Shoes at the time, and they still supported me even though I didn't race. So we went on trails tours like all over the UK and stuff like that. So yeah, it definitely didn't just stop. The racing stopped, but the stuff carried on for a while.
Okay. Oh, I was going to ask you about the KODs, because that was a bit before, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was the Titan days, right? The KODs.
Yeah, and again, I think it just come from the stuff that we were seeing, around the world, of more, like more tricks being done and pictures that we'd seen in magazines, and it was just it was something. We used to go to indoor races in France, and it was kind of a bit of a, like the break between like quarterfinals and semi-finals. They started to build like dirt jumps and stuff in between, like straight in between two of the straights, and there'd be some dirt jumpers doing stuff, and we just started doing that, and it became part of a national series weekend,
Yeah. Who used to put them on over here? Was there like certain people that actually arranged them, or?
Yeah, so I think it came from the riders originally, like Sir Keith Dooley, Jim Dirt, those guys who were into dirt jumping, and just going to like the race organisers and stuff, and talking with them, and then it just became a thing that would happen during the day. Like you'd just have you'd pick the jump, on the track. And you'd just have a jumping contest, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember I went to a couple. They were quite fun to watch, actually. Well, and also I wanted to ask you: was there T-shirts at some point that said "Doc Smooth"?
Yeah. So
I couldn't figure this out. I was thinking about it the other day. I couldn't find any pictures, but I just remember these, like, I think you had a couple of captions, didn't you, that said "Doc Smooth" as well?
It was again, there was a bunch of guys who created like their own kind of crew, and it was called LRP, like London Rocket People. It was called. It was like
Clive I remember.
Gosling. Yeah, Clive Goslin and Carl Olford and all of those guys. Steve Bardens, who was the photographer for Ride at the time, and they just come up with it, and then all of a sudden, like, there was T-shirts and long sleeve T-shirts, and there was a number plate. And this was at the point when it was when I was on Titan. So again, it was the boom again, and I was just racing and loving racing and doing well and riding my bike, and it wasn't really, if anything, probably at that point, it was probably a bit like I felt a bit cringy about it, but it was just a bit. It was a bit of fun. It wasn't. It was something that someone else created. They created the nickname. They created this stuff, and all of a sudden,
it wasn't even yours.
Yeah,
you. No, okay, I didn't even know. Yeah.
No, yeah, someone else did it, and all of a sudden, there's loads of young kids riding around with a picture of me on the number plate, and Dylan Clayton, and like T-shirts and stuff like that. I think, they made up the name, and then they were like, you should, because they were making LRP stuff, and it was that era of where people were pulling up, selling T-shirts out the back of the car and all that kind of stuff, which was a really cool time, and I wish it would happen more. Because all that stuff's really, I love all of that stuff. And I think they created, at that point, I was on Titan. So Martin and Stephen's mum and my mum and dad were involved at this point with the Titan thing. And they were importing UGP from America because I'd met Bonner and all that kind of stuff. And it just became part of that, you know what I mean? That they were doing this stuff. Yeah. But I was just, like I said, it was probably like, cringing about it. Just cracking on with what I was
I
doing.
wonder, I just remember seeing it, and then I think I read the captions because, for me looking at race stuff then, and I remember thinking like, how can you be smooth at racing? These guys don't even take off, and I couldn't grasp. I didn't know anything about it. I'm just like jumping up and landing on the floor or doing an air and like whatever, and I just couldn't figure it out. But then like many years later, obviously I can tell the difference. But I just remember seeing that. And then there's like a bit of a skate park boom when you're on Sun, like you were saying. And then you start getting coverage like just riding, right? This is like later on.
Yeah, and I think again it was built from stuff that was going on in America and stuff that was going on in the rest of Europe. Again, like France is still like a big boom BMX place, and there's a lot of really good riders, like racers, trail riders, park riders, coming out of France. And it was just I remember Sun. Like I remember we again going back to having those custom made frames, and we did. I remember they did this deal with Columbus tubing, which was like this really sick, like chromoly tubing. I remember one year that like our top tube and down tube was like butted tubing, and the tubing was really thin in the middle, like almost as thin like you could press it a little bit, but like the detail that was going into it. But then at the same time, they produced a trails frame, and it was called a Sun 2 Boss, and it had like 8990 mounts, like on the chainstay, you know what I mean, and it had like a gusset at the front of it, and it was just a bit more heavy duty bike. And again, this was just what was happening in BMX, and I was just like, I want to, I think at that point, I think Brian had like the Swin Blue Falcon, what I mean, which was a chromoly bike when all the Swin race frames were that, you know what I mean. And I want to race that bike. And I remember going, "What, you'll race it?" I'm like, "Yeah." So they got one of the trails frames and they painted it in the team color, and I raced, for the best part of 2 seasons on a heavier chromoly Sun trails frame called the 2 Boss, because in that period, you know what I mean, I was riding trails, I was riding skate parks more, and I was always of that thing. I just want to do it on the same bike. I don't want to have It was always, you just did it on one bike, and it was kind of going back to that stage of BMX of going, it's a trails bike, but it's also it's a BMX bike. You know what I mean? It's like I'm racing it. And there's some.
What was that? The blue one? Was that?
Yeah. It was a blue one.
Yeah,
the team colour was blue, and I remember when I turned up at this race in France on a 2 Boss, but it was in the actual team colour. You know what I mean? And people so again, you think about Max trying to promote something, and then one of his racers turns up on the trail bike, the new trail bike in the team colours, and he's going to race on it. But for me, it was just because I just wanted to ride. I just wanted to ride a bike that I could ride everything on.
So what would have been when you guys used to come Pinner, right? Would you have raced at Slough on that and then come to Pinner on that? Like, I remember
probably.
You guys used to come to Pinner in the summer, like you, Dale, a bunch of other guys as well.
Yeah, so Martin, Stephen, all of those,
that's it.
Guys, Edgeworth, all those guys, like that race crew who were, always bike, like again, when talking about Chico, this is 15 years later of us being at the beginning of our journey, meeting at a national and asking the local kids, is there a local jump somewhere? We're still doing the same thing all those years down the line. We've just done it in loads of different places. So when we talked about this, that's one of the things that instantly came to mind of those times at Pinner, because that was probably the first. I think I obviously met you guys through Grot Bags, and I remember meeting Adam for the first time, and then that was all in that kind of in that pocket of where we would end up coming to Pinner and meeting you guys. Because I remember the first time going to Pinner, it was just the one jump where you'd start on the grass and drop into the grass and just jump. And then I remember going back the summer after, and it was where it carried on. I went round the back, and I think there was a couple of sets, and then you drop back in.
Yeah, that's it.
And that was the era of me. It was almost like going back to the beginning of I'm on one bike, I'm racing, but weirdly I'm a full-time professional BMX racer, but I'm back to doing the whole thing.
What you like to do, yeah. I remember at Penny, you always used to like there was two lines, weren't there? And you used to like the top one with a jump that went into the berm and then took you down the hill. Remember that? Yeah. I was saying, I like that jump, yeah. Yeah, that was good. We used to have good sessions down there, man.
Yeah, I remember being like, there was a lot of people at those sessions. I remember like summer being, was it a cricket?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was a cricket club at the top.
I remember being out, like, you know what I mean? Like when it started to get dusky or whatever, and we'd been riding for a couple of hours, like all sat out on the grass, just chilling out. And yeah, I remember being quite a lot of people, but that was the first, I think that's the first integration of like the racer guys into with you lot, which again was a different.
So it was so separate. Yeah, they were so separate at that point.
Yeah,
but it's good, man. Brought us together. Grotbag asked you about the Dutch Worlds, but I think you already touched that, right?
So that was 93. So I won in 91. Then the year after was in Brazil. I got second, I think, and then I won 2 titles in 93 in Holland. But that was that first start of that kind of sun era, and that next wave of BMX being, I'm not sure it ever got as big here as what it was in the 80s, but it definitely got a lot bigger and a lot closer to where it was. Because obviously I was at one until Dale went to America. I think I was probably the only full time, because I remember people being angry about that I was being paid full time to be a BMX racer. You know what I mean? It's like people like BMX, you shouldn't be a job or whatever. I remember rumors all about that.
What, other riders or?
Yeah, well, like parents and stuff. Like
okay.
Yeah, and I guess, again, it wasn't as big. I was riding for a French bike company, so it clearly wasn't as big as what it was in the 80s, when Amico Mongoose and Rally and stuff was there. But it was definitely a boom point. It was booming in France again. It was huge in America again. Mid to late 90s, it really boomed again. Yeah, it was nice. I think racing got bigger, but I think this was the boom of like freestyle again, and skate parks and all of that kind of stuff. Definitely blew up.
Yeah, man. Oh, and what's the story of the car crash?
So that race that I was on about then, where I raced that trail bike. The first time was an indoor race in France, in Rennes, and I was going back to the south of France where the factory was with that, and I had a company car and I'd driven it back to France because it had to go back to the south of France to be changed. We were getting new ones, and the guy we used to have like a team mechanic who'd deal with bikes and stuff like that. I'd raced for 2 days in a row, so I was in the team vehicle with some other team riders, and he was driving my car on his own. And we stopped for fuel, and I kind of felt a bit sorry for him. We'd been looking after my bike all weekend, and I was like, I'll just jump in with him on his own. And then I'd fell asleep probably within 20 minutes, half an hour of driving. And then he fell asleep whilst driving the car, and had a pretty nasty car crash. Basically, the police came to the hospital the next day and basically said, like, we shouldn't be having a conversation. You really shouldn't be here. We were both thrown from the car. Like I went
thrown out the car.
Yeah, I went through the window screen of the car. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, but that was the last thing I remember about it. The other thing I remember about it is Casio G-Shock had come out, and it's weird because they're having a resurgence, and they were trying to promote through Extreme Sport, and the original, like the one with the big red button that you press and the light comes on. And I remember firstly waking up and thinking to myself, I'm alive, was the first thought. But then the next thought was, I'm outside, because I could feel like wet, like the grass on my face.
Yeah.
And then I remember, kind of pushing myself up, and obviously I'd hit the button, and it was like 13 minutes past 1 in the morning. And I was out, like freaked out because I was outside, and then senses started to come back, and I could hear the car revving. I remember pushing myself up off the ground, and all my hand was all mangled here. I had to take my jumper off and wrap it around my arm. And I thought the guy was trapped in the car, and like kind of walking back to the car, like kind of, like you feel like, I remember like feeling blood and stuff running down my face, and wiping my face, it was bleeding or whatever. But I thought he was trapped in the car. And as I got to the car, I could hear him shouting, but then he came walking from round the side of the car, and he looked at me and fainted. The guy, I'm thinking,
okay.
But we'd actually gone, like we're on the motorway, and we'd gone up a grass verge, and over, like kind of over the back of it. So basically, the police said to us, if you weren't thrown from the car, you probably would have died in the car, because no one knew you was there. He said the only reason why you're alive is because for some reason you were thrown from the car, and that you were able to walk back down to the road, and we had to walk to. I remember trying to explain to his English wasn't that great, and he's a fan of Bicycle Union as well. He's a filmer for Vans now.
Okay.
Alex Barrett, his name is. Remember 20 bikes out of France? Was it 20?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So Alex, he was
the driver.
He was driving the car, yeah. But now he's one of the main filmer guys for Vans. So yeah, I remember trying to explain to him about the SOS phones at the side of the road or whatever, and we ended up walking to that. And I was fully in and out of consciousness by the time the police came first, and the ambulance. And yeah, my hand, like my wrist had snapped, and it was just all meaty and fleshy, horrible here.
Man.
Like the scar, I still got the scar and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm guessing he said that because not a lot of people know about that.
Yeah. Well, so the car just did like Dukes of Hazzard, like took off.
Yeah, like fully. And the guy said that to us. He was like, if we record this on video, he said, the only thing I can imagine, the way he explained it, he said, is when they fire the clown out of the cannon.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He said, he said, because I'd gone through the window screen, because I hit the window screen with this side of my head, because I still got the scars. And I still had shards of glass coming out my head years later, because obviously it works its way out. Because I was like 15, 20 meters away from the car when I came round, so I got properly fired out the car.
Unreal,
nuts.
Yeah.
And he said also as well, the fact that I was asleep and he was asleep was another. He said if you weren't, then you would have tried to brace. He said, and that's when the fact that you was asleep and you probably woke up but not been fully awake, you just went for the ride.
That's nuts. Yeah, that's a crazy story. I've not heard that one before. Oh man! And like, how long is it? Are you still riding for Sun when you opened Firm Bikes, the shop?
No, so that's kind of when it had ended, probably a couple of years before then. Again, that didn't that ended on not so good terms, because basically the company was so big, they were bringing in other investors, and then the investors, from my understanding, is they kind of started going against Max's ideas about taking the company forwards, and he just ended up walking away from it.
Oh, really?
And left it to these investors. Yeah, and I remember getting it was fax fax back then. Like my plane tickets used to come by fax, everything come by fax. So I remember getting a letter basically saying that they'd separated the company. There was Sun Bicycles, and then there was Team Sun, and then 2 months after that, I stopped getting my salary. And then 2 months after that, like they declared Team Sun bankrupt, and that was it. All our contracts were cancelled, and that was the end of it from there. So yeah, I was older, not really had any experience in anything else other than BMX.
Yeah.
And then, just had to kind of figure out what to do next and come up with some different ideas, and ended up, the mail order thing was becoming a thing then, and kind of thought this is what I want to do. And then, to have accounts with companies, they wanted you to have like a shop front and whatever. Obviously, Alan's is in Wigan, so again, it couldn't really open another bike shop. So we went to Warrington and did that, and it was good. We created a good scene there. The big thing was
it looked good.
Yeah, it was like Jersey and Nails, and the BSD guys. They were sponsored by them, and like Harry Main. I remember Harry Main coming buying his first BMX bike with his mum for Christmas, and obviously Harry turned into what he turned into, but it was done on somebody else's money. So my partner, his dad was the money behind it, and it ended up being a pretty shit time, because it ended not in a good way, and it wasn't a decision that I made. It was the fact of I was the bike guy there, and the other guy was more the accountant's guy and looking after the business end of it, which he wasn't doing the best with. And his dad just decided overnight to pull the plug, and we locked the shop up one night, and I came back the morning after, and it was being emptied there, and that was it. It was done. You know what I mean? So it ended. It didn't end the best way. But yeah.
How long was that there for? Though? Is there for a few years or something?
I think 2-3 years it was there. And again, like I said, it was a really good thing, and it was just a shame. But again, that kind of, older and wiser, business partners, and be careful, learn some lessons from it, and kind of was really pissed off the fact that I felt like I'd let some people who had supported me for a long time down, who were distributors and suppliers at that point. But luckily enough, they're super cool guys. Of next time we seen each other, it was all good, and they kind of, you won't be the first, you won't be the last. You know what I mean? Shit happens. So yeah, I was lucky, to still to carry on with those friendships. So yeah, but yeah, just it was the next stage. Of what do I do after the professional bike career, and everybody wants to own their own bike shop, right?
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah, as hard as it is. And where do you go from there then? When that closes, what's your next?
So I, at this stage, BMX had just been announced. BMX racing had just been announced as an Olympic sport, and then so. Obviously the national series events and stuff were still going on, and then the national governing body, that is British Cycling, kind of then, it's an Olympic discipline. They kind of are cycling Olympic discipline, so they take it under their wing, and the hunt for Olympic glory started. And there was job opportunities in BMX at British Cycling.
Right. Well, that's soon, yeah.
Yeah, so I went. I was 33, 34, and attended my first job interview, which was terrifying at British Cycling. It wasn't for the job that I do now. They created this really cool program called Go Ride, and it was around engaging with local schools and feeding young kids from local areas, youth clubs and schools, into their local BMX clubs.
Yeah, okay.
So again, I had a van with a trailer, like 30 BMX bikes and 30 helmets, and I'd arranged to go into schools. We'd go in for like 6 weeks, and then the kids would attend the club and do a race. So again, it was the whole returning to, I was once the kid getting into and then I was then the person trying to promote this thing that I've lived to other kids. And it was really good, and really enjoyed it, like hanging out with young people every day in and around bikes and teaching kids how to do wheelies and and just having fun, really. And then feeding them into local clubs. But then it started to have a reward of when you'd see somebody who you'd done 6 weeks with in a school who started to then attend the club. And then we've got riders now who are on our Olympic program who were first introduced to a BMX bike on the primary school playground when they were 7. So it has created a really, recreated a journey, albeit in a different way. It's been a really great ride, and I've been there. I've been at British Cycling for 19 years now.
No way, man.
Yeah,
that's a while, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's when the shop closed. That was 19 years ago.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. And what are you doing there now?
So now I did that job for 9 years, and strangely enough, this is the start of year 9 in my new role. So I think this helped grow BMX racing again, this whole British cycling, because at one point there was almost 50 versions of me across the whole of the country, going into schools and feeding kids into cycling clubs. Yeah. And there was a lot more there was a lot more funding to build BMX tracks. So there was a lot more clubs. There was a lot more opportunity, and it started. Like I said, we've got riders who are now in the Olympic pathway. So the pathway actually became the Great Britain cycling team pathway became bigger because we were seeing more talented riders, because we were feeding more riders into the sport. So then they created what they call a talent pathway, which sits before the performance pathway. So I lead the BMX talent pathway. So my job is to go. I do a regional delivery and national delivery. So BMX is broken down into 5 different regions across the UK: North, Midlands, South, East and Southwest. And we deliver a program in each of them regions. And my job is to find the ones who I feel are talented on the bike, got good connection, good flow, do some stuff, and then we select from those 5 regions into our national team, which is the first part of the Great Britain cycling program. So they wear a Great Britain cycling jersey, they're representing Great Britain cycling team, and those riders then the best ones from that pocket are selected to go into the Olympic development program. Then it's a podium potential program. And then right at the top are our Kai Whites and our Bess Shrevers and our Ross Cullens, the ones who are going out performing on the highest stage. So it's a full circle. Like I said, it's me going on that journey with somebody else in a different role. So I'm now the rider developer, the rider coach, giving them the support to try and, my job, the biggest part of my job, which I love, is it's all about making them technically better on the bike. So being able to jump better, manual better.
Yeah, okay.
So that was what I was into. And now my job is to kind of feed that coaching information in to them to help them ride their bike better.
Passing forth the skills, mate. That's what it is, isn't it? And how often do you get, you still get on a bike yourself?
Yeah, I still ride, not as much as what I have pockets of where I kind of I'll ride, maybe a couple of times a month or something like that. But then I'll be like, depending, like now I'm starting regional delivery again, and the race season's about to start. So I'll be out and about, so not get that much time to ride. And then when you've run a coaching session all day, you know what I mean, for like 6 hours, and been dealing with 30 kids. I tried in the beginning of taking my bike with me, but I was fried by the time I'd done all of that and kind of didn't ride. So I still try and get out a bit, still ride. I actually ride a mountain bike probably more, just because where I live, like this is my office, I can go out and just ride. So it's more of a brain clearing exercise, a bit of a freedom exercise. But I also definitely still ride my bike. Go to Darwin a little bit, Junction 4 skate park. They've got that little trail.
Skate park,
yeah.
Amazing.
Still go and do a little bit and ride at the track. Like I said, there's loads of little dirt jumps. We've got a super cool place 10 minutes ride from here. It's actually a mountain bike park, but some guys who were building BMX trails had them ploughed, and they gave them some space at the top. So there's some BMX trails at the top of there as well, which
excellent.
You can jump in there and ride that stuff as well.
Cool, man. That sounds cool. That's about. I'm at the end of my list there, but that was very fascinating, interesting. I like all the stuff about the way you sort of figured out how to like get faster on without pedaling. Yeah, that's
I did some stuff. Well, my dad did some stuff around, like people used to pedal different. I always used to see people pedal, like call it duck foot, like where they're pedaling, their feet would be poking out and they'd be on their heels. And I remember speaking about it on something else about my dad kind of figured out like more towards the ball of your foot and the front of your foot. You get your ankle moving more. So like things like that, like at the time you were just playing and experimenting because no one knew anything, you know what I mean? But now it's actually a thing, you know what I mean? Like working in the job that I do now and linking with the performance pathway, you know what I mean? You can evidence stuff works with data and all of this craziness, which is wild when you're trying new stuff, but where you can't, like you can when you know what you're looking at, you can kind of see it with the naked eye, but proving it to somebody else who doesn't see it the way that you see it. Like, but when you can go, so this is what it looks like when he does it like this. This is what he does it like when she does it like that.
Yeah. So I've had a similar thing where, because I have my foot on the pedal in a sit, like the ball of my foot in the middle of the pedal as well, similar to what you're talking about. And sometimes I watch other people ride, and they're like you say, they're like in their instep.
Yeah,
with their feet like slightly pointing outwards. And I'm like, you can't like name any other like physical activity where somebody's using their heels or the middle of their foot, putting the weight on the middle of their feet. I was like, you're making it hard for yourself, and it takes people ages to, like, some of them anyway, to like actually.
And then your legs
it doesn't work.
Will bend differently because of the angle of your feet are at, and you're wondering why you can't bend in enough because you know what I mean. It's
like the spring of your body comes off the ball of your feet, like no matter what you're doing. So I think that was Rob Bags that was talking about that.
Yeah, the connection
of your feet on the pedals. Man.
But yeah, I mean, super interesting. Now from the journey to where we're at now, and how BMX looks. It is, I try and pass on that stuff of, still the main part of especially the age I work with, of 14 and 15-year-olds, you know what I mean? It's still fun. We're still experimenting. We're still learning. And it's still enjoyable. It's all right to get stuff wrong, you know what I mean? Because you're still learning and you've still got loads of time. So I'm still in the pocket where I always wanted to be. Whereas the main thing is we're enjoying it and we're having fun. We're riding bikes,
Yeah.
It's
that's nice.
Full circle.
Excellent. Good to hear. All right, man. Well, I'm good with that. If you're good with that, then
Thanks for listening. We've got a Patreon page, so if you could show us any support, we'd be most grateful. the links below. A lot of work goes into these shows, so anything you could do would be much appreciated. Thank you.